everybody. Welcome back to the Enlightened Investor, your home for economic and financial enlightenment, right? So we got Dr. Amit Sinha back with us here again today, and we're talking today about dealing with randomness of returns and maybe a sound process. This doesn't sound good. Might not lead to always a great outcome. So, let's talk about randomness a little bit first, then we'll get into some outcomes a little bit later. It's interesting, right? Like, it really depends a lot of times just on randomness, like when you were born. It talks about when you retire, like what happens to the market. Like if you retire right when the stock market is going through a correction or consolidation period, that is bad timing. You couldn't affect that. You have to play the cards you're dealt. So this situation of randomness is, we all have to deal with it, right? And what's the best approach for an investor when we're talking about randomness, and how can we maybe minimize some of that and the unluckiness or the lucky part of it all? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think a good example to give people here on randomness, because I think I see a lot of people struggle with this, is like think about this investment process where you're going to say, I'm going to buy equities and I'm going to do it in a diversified manner. I'm going to buy the Vanguard S&P 500 index and I'm going to beat my CD portfolio returns. And if you look through history for the last 100 years, there are 3 time periods, and we can throw them up on the screen, where one was 15 years, but the other 2 are almost 15 years, where those returns equaled a 30-day treasury bill. So think of a 30-day CD.
Yep.
Over 10 years. And whenever whenever I talk to people about returns, and you say 10 years, people tell me, Mike, that's a long time. 10 years. And what's the misnomer? It's over long haul, stocks beat CDs, right? Well, not all the time. So that wasn't that they didn't have a good decision, but they had a bad outcome. And just the opposite is you can go buy an individual stock or ETF or sector or something that's hot and have done really well. You bought QQQ or you bought Apple, 9,000%.
Yep. Yeah.
Was that a good decision? No. Was the outcome good? Yes.
Yeah.
So
I think people forget what's happening. Their recency bias, right? Like, Amit and I kind of are the same age. We came out maybe with our PhDs around 2000, right? And I remember, what's that lost decade you always talk about, Mike? The decade from 2000 to 2010.
Right.
We were putting money in. We were doing the right things, Amit. But what happened was, at the end of 10 years. Gosh, I think we just broke even, although we dollar cost average all the way down, which kind of helped our return. But as Mike was saying, we could have just put it into a 3-month treasury bill, and we could have perhaps in that 10-year period had the same rate of return.
Yeah, but would that have been a good decision?
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Because then you have kind of reduced the odds of having a more success in your portfolio in terms of better returns. And some of these concepts are not easy, because when you talk about long term, what really is long term?
Yes. Is it 10 years? Is it 15?
In terms of pure definition, is 1 year.
Oh, is that what they do? Okay.
Yeah.
You define it?
And yes. And think.
Gains too, right?
Yeah.
That's true.
And
producers' timing.
And you think of the financial modelings in asset pricing, it always talks about 1 period ahead. And so is that one period 1 month, 1 year, but it's not ever 10 years. So your horizon is just that. And because of that, you could, you're struggling in one side that what really is long term, that should be multiple years when you are starting out in your career, like you and I did when we had our jobs. But our asset pricing models are based on how we would price our stocks and whatever, is just does not match. So there's a mismatch there.
Well, here's another thing. How do we get people, this is behavioral economics and financial financial behavioral finance. How do we get people to stick with good processes, even though it's been, 5-10 years of maybe bad outcomes? I mean, I know it's more of a psychological thing, but how do we get people to stick with good processes?
Well, I mean, there's some rhetorical words that people oftentimes use, and stay the course.
Well, also
but
about looking.
it's not easy to.
Yeah, how do
Don't you think,
yeah.
Amit, it would help though if you could just educate on a higher level, like we talked about in the previous video, the base rates and the odds of success. If you educate people on the odds of success and achieving success, and forgetting about the outliers and hitting those high odds, isn't that a much more important thing to look at the process? Do I have a process that's focused on the odds instead of the outliers?
Yes, and I think if
good
you
comment.
so probably what one should think about is not success but accomplishment. Accomplishment is driven out of a process. Okay, and so that might allow people to focus more on the process than on just on the outcome. And this is not something as human beings we have found it easy. Like, on the days where you're just walking into the office and somebody cuts you off, you're about to go into the elevator and you're the last one in, or because you're the last one you can't get in, and so there's a small negative events that almost accumulates, and then all of a sudden you feel, oh my goodness, I'm having a really terrible day. I mean, you get what I'm saying. But you can't just apply that, oh, I'm having a bad, terrible day, I'm just going to get out of my stock market today. Stock market is so volatile. Maybe that was the worst decision to be made that particular day.
I really appreciate your comments on that, on success and accomplishment. I think that we see accomplishment. There's you have to put something in to get something out, right? You got to that hard work, that dedication, that stay with it to it, that accomplishment, right? Of reaching that, you have to keep your focus, right?
Yes.
And success might just be like, I play golf and I hit a hole in one.
Yeah.
And it was success. Yes.
And
it was
I
a
don't
little bit
think.
of luck
Well, I
involved,
can tell you
right?
this from what I see with most people is they don't have a process. They've got a person they trust. They don't even understand the process that person uses, and what the process they use is not written, by the way, because I've never seen anybody have a written plan or investment policy statements you mentioned. So process is so important.
Yes.
And I can tell you that most people don't have a process. And most advisors don't, by the way, because it's a lot. It takes work to have a process, and you can't have 400 clients with a process and be one advisor. I mean, because you have a relationship with about 75 people, and the bulk of the industry, I think they show the average advisor out there has like 300 to 400 clients. So the process is you're gonna get a monthly statement from us. You're not gonna get any quarterly reporting. We're not gonna do benchmarking. We're not doing any modeling of your plan.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of lack of process out there. I can tell you that.
So you started talking about the randomness. Randomness in itself isn't bad if you think about the pricing aspect of it, and then this is the paper
It
that
makes life interesting too, right?
Yes,
It makes life interesting.
But one of the things that I noticed, and this is the paper I published in the Journal of Forecasting, it's called the reliability of geometric Brownian motion forecast of the S&P 500 index
That's
values.
good stuff, yeah.
But
Good peer-reviewed article right
yes,
there.
but in terms of the
Keep
concept,
it light now. Keep it light.
Yes, and I
Okay.
will. I'll try my best.
Thank you.
And if I do get carried away, stop me.
We'll let you know.
Yeah. Okay. So in this case, I'm just making forecasts of the S&P 500, and this ties into your base rate comment too. So I'm using a model to come up with a base rate forecast of one period ahead, and then I'm simulating a cloud of say 100,000 possibilities. And so each of these 100,000 possibilities has a probabilities. And so based on that, I can then model out what would be the expected outcome of that possibilities. And so if I restrict the randomness, then my valuation doesn't work. So for my valuation to and I think the minimum that was required was I don't remember. It was maybe 1,000 a minimum, but I had gone up to 100,000.
I was going to ask you that question, like how much in that cloud did you put? 100,000?
In this
versus
paper, I
a
did the 100,000 possibilities, but
Got
I
it,
think
got
you
it.
can model up to 1,000 possibilities, and it might work. But the point is that if I wasn't able to, I was not allowing enough randomness in there, my approach of pricing isn't going to work, and it won't be as accurate as it was when I increased the randomness.
Got it.
So, but how do you tell someone this pricing is good because I increase the randomness? That's just not going to be something that normal.
Yeah, I think that for the
That's the world we
average
live in.
person, that's a little deep.
Yes.
But I think on the simpler terms, it's easier to say, here's the difference between a bad decision and a bad outcome. Because people need to understand that.
Yes,
Did I
yes.
make a bad decision or was
More
it or was it a bad outcome?
Yep, yep.
Because I had a good decision, but I had a bad outcome, so it was a bad decision. People have trouble with that.
Yes,
second
they they do have trouble with that, and we have to be very careful in how we communicate, and that's why we need people like you, experts in the practice, such that you could be trusted. You.
Everybody trusts their.
Yeah.
Well, I'm generalizing.
Yes.
And so, and there are going to be people who are not going to be able to do the communication that is needed to be given to the investors. And so there is a disconnect there that is, if the client is not able to connect with the fiduciary, because the fiduciary is either not taking the effort to explain some of these things or cannot, then that's
Or they're
a
not
big
taking
problem.
it to a fiduciary level.
Yeah.
This is totally off topic, but I got to bring this up because I was on a conversation a couple of days ago with a friend of mine who's a monk, priest, right? And he's got a college he's formed, and he has been getting in money, and they have an endowment built up. And they have $300,000 now, and he's wanting to do something with it rather than just having it in his money market earning nothing. And he'd gotten an opinion, he told me, from a advisor that happened to be with Equitable, and Catholic, and so he trusted her, and he knows me well enough. We had enough conversations through the years that we've had things, and he says he point blank asked her, "Are you a fiduciary?" And she said, "Father, we're all fiduciaries." And I thought that was great because you understand we're all not fiduciaries all the time.
So, Mike, let me throw.
Sorry, I had to
let me throw us
digress.
back on you. So,
Back to our
the fiduciary process, right? Like, what are some processes like if you were talking to another advisor, like the Catholic monks? What were some things that you would recommend? Like just some basic things. Yeah, or you could chime off on this
Yes,
too. Go ahead.
and I struggle with this. Not struggle, but I think quite a bit of this. And if you think about the role of managers in a corporation, for profit corporations,
Okay.
shareholder wealth maximization. You are not there to make money for yourself. You're there to make money for the shareholders. Sometimes that concept is lost on the managers.
Oh, yes.
I am the CEO of this firm. I am going to do whatever I want. Okay,
That does happen.
yeah, but you're not there to do whatever you want. You're there for a purpose. Okay, and similarly for the fiduciary, the concept, at least in my mind, is you've come to me because you trust me to make the best decisions for you. Okay, if that element doesn't exist, the process is not going to work. And I think a long time ago, when I was working on my CFA back in India, and part of the CFA ethics was, even though you got the CFA and you are qualified to make financial decisions, if somebody comes and tells you, even if that person does not have any knowledge of finance, they come and say, "Hey, I can make better decisions than you." You walk away. You let that person say, you could do it. I just have this knowledge that allows me to make these decisions. But if your decisions are better for you, you make them. I'm not going to make them.
Well,
for you.
that's a good point. I didn't really thought about adding in the whole fiduciary part as the process today because I was more aligned on the mechanics of it. But I mean, theoretically, it's real simple. If you want to have a process, you focus on diversification, cost, and taxes. And that's something we talk about all the time in all these videos, and people are probably getting tired of it.
Yeah,
but in the end, that's what it comes down to, what we can control. And I thought it was a great topic today to talk about luck and randomness and skills and the outcomes and looking at the numbers and how do you analyze whether it was a good decision or not, or the person that you're using is making a good decision, because there's so much noise in the how do you I guess misinformation, that's probably not a good
And I
term
think
for
that's real.
professors, but in the
Yeah.
real world, there's so much out there.
Noise,
How do you
and-
figure out what's right?
So absolutely, and I think one of the issues that I don't really have a solution here because I'm just identifying the problem, is that the definition of success is a benchmark, but definition of success ought to be whether the decision served the purpose you wanted.
Sure.
And how are you going to measure that?
Correct. Well, you're gonna. It's unique with each person.
Exactly.
Right. It's a conversation because everybody's got different. That's why it takes time and work. And,
Yeah.
Yeah. Conversations.
Yeah. And so if in my retirement my goal is I'm not going to run out of money, and when I go there's money left over for my descendants.
Right.
Okay? That valuation or that benchmarking is going to happen when I'm gone. I'm not even going to be around to evaluate whether I succeeded or not.
But that was your goal, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you can model that and you can monitor that and you can look at it every year and at least see if you're heading that direction, rather than just going, I hope I get there.
Yes. So the direction.
Yeah. Well, Amit, this has been such a great conversation. I'm going to kind of wrap it up here and ask you a little bit of something
Spare
different.
everybody.
Getting
It was a deep one.
It was getting too high.
No, this is great.
Instead of talking about near death, we were talking about death.
We were, yes. Yes,
Right before the holidays too.
exactly.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, so Amit, you got it. We got commencement coming up on Saturday. I asked you a little bit. What's your plans for this upcoming holiday break? You got anything planned?
Even this week, I thought this is finals, grading almost done, and whatever. I'm not gonna go to Bradley all 5 days. I ended up going to Bradley all 5 days. Well, I have to go there after I get done here, but that's all 5 days. But anyway, we're planning a short trip to Colorado.
Oh, nice.
Michelle's
See the mountains?
Michelle's mother lives out there, so we're just making.
Let's go visit family.
Visit family.
Can I add a plug before we end?
Please.
Because I think this is when I came up with this topic. It kind of was this book here that
Success
led me
Equation.
that way. And if people want, it's not too deep a dive, but if you want to really get into it more, this is a great book, and we'll throw a link out on the site, I guess, on the Enlightened Investor website as well.
That's right.
Sorry, I just add that 2 cents.
And even
New Year,
that
gentlemen.
book, even that book, Rethinking Positive Thinking,
Yes.
that might
We'll put it up there too.
All right.
Amit, thanks
Yeah,
for being
behavior
here.
is
Thank you.
important too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mike?
Happy New Year, gentlemen.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.